Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. We carry these massive loads of daily responsibility, right? But over time, we get so incredibly used to the weight that we totally forget it's even there. It's just normal. Today, we're going to dive right in and unpack the fascinating framework behind this exact psychological phenomenon. We call it the Saturnian grind.
I absolutely love this quote. Pressure becomes routine until you stop noticing it. It just perfectly hits the nail on the head. It captures our core thesis here. What happens when constant, heavy effort simply becomes your invisible baseline? It's this profound, almost sneaky shift where the extraordinary demands of life literally morph into your everyday normal.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll define exactly what this grind is, then look at the endless work cycle, how we normalize daily stress, why health has to become a structured routine, and finally, we'll wrap up with the long-term payoff.
All right, let's kick things off with part 1. Defining the Saturnian grind, looking at it as symbolic astrology rather than some literal fate.
Now, in astrology, the concept of Saturn in the 6th house is heavily tied to discipline, workload, and pressure management. But listen, we aren't looking at this as some literal, inescapable fate written in the stars. No way. Instead, think of it as a really powerful symbolic archetype. Honestly, it's the perfect psychological lens for us to examine our own relentless work habits and why we do what we do.
Moving on to part 2, the endless work cycle and the psychology behind constant duty.
Usually people view a job as something occasional and finite. You do the work, you cross it off your to-do list, and boom, you go rest. But this Saturnian framework, it totally flips that script. It treats work as a constant, ongoing responsibility. The job is never truly done, and rest isn't just something you take whenever you feel like it. No, in this mindset, rest is strictly earned and only after some serious, sustained, grueling effort.
What this does is create a shockingly strict internal work ethic. It's wild. You end up feeling completely responsible for productivity, even when there's zero external pressure on you. You're the person doing all those tedious cleanup tasks at the office party that everyone else just ignores. And by naturally absorbing all these unasked burdens, you basically march yourself directly into a state of quiet overload. You're carrying the whole team's weight, usually without saying a single word.
Which brings us right to part 3, normalizing daily stress, and what happens when feeling overwhelmed simply becomes your default.
Because here's the thing, you face situations that would make most people just throw their hands up and quit, but you don't panic. Instead, you put your head down and you adapt, slowly but steadily. And soon enough, that initial crushing overwhelm, it becomes completely manageable to you. You possess this unique, almost dangerous capacity to just slowly acclimate to intense, unrelenting pressure.
But wow, there is a massive catch here. Because of this incredible tendency to adapt, you literally normalize the stress. What everybody else correctly identifies as a total crisis feels like just another Tuesday to you. It's your default operating state. It's the water you swim in. And that means you won't even realize you're burnt out until you intentionally force yourself to step back, evaluate the situation, and firmly reset your boundaries.
Let's look at part 4, health as a structured routine, or the physical reality of all this endurance. To actually survive this continuous grind, your whole approach to health has to change. Spontaneous wellness, like just randomly dropping into a yoga class once a month, that is simply not going to cut it. If you neglect yourself, it will show up slowly but very clearly. Long-term survival here requires highly structured, absolutely non-negotiable habits around your sleep, your diet, and your exercise. Maintaining your body literally becomes a duty, exactly like your work. And you'll see this discipline bleed right into how you grow and learn. For you, skills improve through consistent repetition and sheer discipline, absolutely not through sudden bursts of inspiration. You're definitely not sitting around waiting for some magical muse to arrive. You rely entirely on putting in the reps and making continuous corrections. Really, it's that unglamorous, everyday, daily grind that ultimately builds the master.
And finally, part 5, the long-term payoff, authority, maturity, and mastery. Now, let's talk about the journey. In your early career, your efforts are probably going to feel completely invisible. Recognition is heavily delayed. But as you move into your mid-career, a massive shift happens. You become the foundational pillar that everyone else depends on. And by your late career, all that invisible effort translates into undeniable workplace authority. The ultimate payoff is incredible stability, deep, hard-won maturity, and an unbreakable resilience that's practically forged in stone.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really chew on regarding your own habits. Are you merely normalizing stress and trapping yourself in an invisible, endless cycle of pressure? Or are you consciously using this immense weight to build true, long-term resilience? Because honestly, it is a very fine line between the two. Thank you so much for exploring this framework with me today.